and some technical issues, none of which have been resolved. So I will still probably be sporadic with this streaming thing. But in regards to the health issues, I have been making some strides. Um, but of course, this is going to require medications and so on and so forth. So definitely a long-term thing. I apologize that this is going to make my content very inconsistent. I'm also going to look into getting a regular schedule for this so that I can just, and then committing to it so that you can expect at least a couple times a week. I'll be going over videos and making stuff because I know that's just a big piece of how you get this going. But anyways, I kind of wanted to go over something simple that isn't going to get me too irritated. I haven't watched a lot of this video that we're going to go over, but I did hear enough that, like, triggered isn't probably the right word, but I'm irritated by what's going to be said. Regardless, I wanted to go over a lot of the tricks he's using, and fortunately, this is more language. Since this is just someone talking, it's almost strictly language use and not. There's no debate or rhetoric tricks here. It's literally just the manipulative language. But we're going to go over Coach Red Pill's video, what Russia wants from its invasion of Ukraine, and why Zelensky is, wait for it, evil. Yeah, real nuance take. Yep. Okay, so let's just get into it. Also, since he's kind of boring to watch, and I'm kind of boring to look at, I will be doing this while I'm playing Phoenix Point. Which if you're interested in seeing that kind of content, I can stream myself and record myself playing that, but I'm not very good. I absolutely save scum the crap out of it. But anyways, let's just get into it.
So today is Saturday, February 26th, and it's the third day of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Now, people in the United States do not seem to understand what is going on insofar as Russia's invasion is concerned. Because they keep saying that Russia is failing, which is the weirdest comment. Russia is failing because Russia hasn't taken out the infrastructure of Ukraine, hasn't hit the electrical grid, hasn't destroyed the cell phone towers or the water supplies. It's remarkable. They keep insisting that the Russians seem to advance and then retreat whenever they meet any resistance.
Okay, so the critique comes from the fact that if you look at the numbers, Russia should absolutely demolish Ukraine. Like, their number of active service members is literally the entirety of the reservist service members of Ukraine. In terms of percentage of budget spending, it's like 12% versus maybe 9%. In terms of dollars, it's like actual dollars, it's crazy. It's also the fact that for decades, because America needs a bad guy, and because, well, and not just America, but because Europe needs a boogeyman, they've painted Russia as this big, scary superpower. And in terms of, like, globally, yeah, they're up there. But trying to compare anything to the American military is a joke. We spend more than the next 10 countries combined, the majority of which are allies. And I don't mean like 6-4, I mean like 9-1 majority. And we've been spending that for decades in comparison to what other countries are spending, right? It's a bigger portion of our GDP, so on and so forth. The only competition we have militarily is maybe China, and only because China has such a massive population. I also don't think that I'm not certain this is the case, but I would assume that the Chinese government doesn't particularly care what happens to their population. but yeah, so like so part of that is there's a perception about Russia being this very strong military power, and relatively speaking to the rest of the world, they kind of are. But I actually saw an interesting video where he discussed the content creator's name is Perun, Perun, um, and he discussed why Russia seems to be struggling against Ukraine if they're supposed to be this big military superpower. And basically, what it boils down to is Russia's military was not designed for this kind of warfare. They haven't been spending and building for this kind of warfare, so obviously they're not going to be super great at it. That said, they still have the capabilities that exceed what Ukraine does. But anyways, the ultimate point I was building to was Russia should, through it from a numbers perspective, be, and just from the numbers, like the actual numbers, they should actually have a massive upper hand. Combined with how the rest of the world has painted the Russian military, they should be this big scary bad guy that should actually be able, that should just be able to walk all over Ukraine. So whatever the actual narratives are as to like Ukraine, or sorry, Ukraine's assistance, like making a joke out of Russia, in some degree it's true. Part of that, or a bigger part of that, has to be with the plan that Russia went into this with. Russia had to, or I shouldn't say this, the speculation, because obviously we don't know what they actually planned, but the speculation is that Russia expected this to be a quick incursion where they took the capital, they overthrew Zelensky, and they installed a puppet government, right? They've had all kinds of trouble as far as like equipment and troops and morale, but this idea that Russia's getting stomped is kind of true, but also not true at the same time, right? What Russia sent in is getting wrecked, R-E-K-T, wrecked, right? But like this is nowhere near their full capabilities. They're not. This isn't like a full invasion. This is more of like they were trying to make a surgical strike. Things didn't go as planned. Now they have to reassess. But anyways, yeah. So I don't know where he's getting this narrative that like Russia. Anyways.
It's just a failure of imagination on the part of so many American commentators that they do not seem to understand what Russia is really doing with this invasion. Because you see, the American mode of war is to go to a country and destroy everything.
Okay. No, it's not. Even without tactical nukes, the weapons that we have at our disposal, and the number of those weapons we have at our disposal, could literally level countries. Not big countries, but countries. I mean, what's the mother of all bombs? The Moab that Trump dropped in was it Afghanistan, or I forget where he dropped it, but like we have a lot of those, right? So like this idea that like America just goes in like a wrecking ball. No, not really. This is silly, right? This also plays into tropes. Like this is. I don't think he has an actual understanding of these things. I think he just like believes the shit that he hears from whatever news sources he listens to and whatever commentators he listens to. Like this is trope shit, right?
Destroy the electrical grid, the cell towers, the water supply system, everything. Just destroy the whole thing, and then roll in. That's not fighting a war. That's just.
Also, no, that's not. They don't destroy the electrical grid. To destroy the they shut down the electrical grid. They cause enough damage that, and that's if they don't have the ability to just turn off the fucking power, right? Like, American military has the surgical precision to send in a strike team prior to an invasion to capture plants and turn them off, or like this is so not true.
mopping up the total annihilation of a country. And the United States has done this repeatedly in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria, or semi-tried to do it in Syria. I mean, it's really kind of like a despicable way of making war, right? But what are the Russians doing? Well, see, the Russians, they don't want to destroy Ukraine. No, they don't want to destroy it at all. What they want to do is they want to capture it intact. And they don't want to hurt the civilians.
Okay, this is true. And I assume he's going to say something about not wanting to hurt the Ukrainian people and to do as little damage to the actual army as possible, because if the point of coming into this country is to absorb it, that should be your goal, which is actually not true of American invasions, quote unquote. Because we don't go to these countries and like we do take over, but in a how do I phrase this? They aren't like part of the country. They're at best puppet states or like territories, which I don't understand the difference, but whatever, right? So like,
why would they? From their point of view, if they harm civilians, they just create enemies. And so,
okay, yes, but that's always the case. Unless the country literally invites you in through some sort of a like. Okay, so this is actually the what is the word I'm looking for? This is the narrative that Russia's trying to spin, that the actual people of Ukraine want them to come in, that they want to be part of Russia, so on and so forth. And this is the explanation they gave with Crimea, right? They said there was like after they came in, they then held a quote unquote referendum and asked, and then the explain. Well, oh look, like 70% of the people in Crimea want to become part of the Russian Federation. Well, when your options in the referendum, the only two answers you can give are to either be absorbed into Russia or to become a what's the phrase? Basically, a satellite country of Russia. Yeah. What other kind of answer are you going to get? Abstain, like not voting. Anyways, I forgot the point I was trying to make here. But yeah, so this idea that that Russia specifically doesn't want to harm the civilians. Well, that's every country, or that's how every invasion works. If your goal is to take the country and then make that land part of your country, which the reason you do this is because the people who live on that land make money, right? Yes, territory gives you power, but where does the power stem from? The power stems from additional population. The population is productive while they live there. You can also they can also be drafted into your army, which means more soldiers, right? It's not literally like the space; it's the people who live in the space that add the additional power. So yes, of course you don't want to harm civilians. The point is for them to become your civilians. So that's a little obvious.
They want to capture Ukraine, change the political leadership of Ukraine, and install a political leadership that is sympathetic to Russia's security needs and is going to be a long-term ally. But
or a puppet state, since there's like no effective difference between those two things, except with a puppet state you don't have to worry about a sympathetic leader, I don't know, no longer being sympathetic, or the actual problem that they ran into when Zelensky took office, where the guy you installed gets beaten in an election. Which is how Zelensky became president. But, okay, let's hear more.
But they don't want to alienate the Ukrainian population. Because if they alienate the Ukrainian population, well, the Ukrainian population will eventually overthrow this puppet regime. And the Russians want to install a puppet regime. Let's not pretend otherwise. But they want to install a puppet regime whereby the Ukrainian citizens are more or less indifferent to it. They don't want to install a puppet regime after having made the lives of the Ukrainians so miserable.
That would be an interesting... Not an issue. That would actually be... Okay, so... This is probably not common knowledge because everyone I watched it, or I heard someone talk about it. I was very surprised about the fairly recent history of Ukraine. But apparently Zelensky, when he won, ousted. You know what? I'll just look up the name. Yushenko? Poroshenko. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, so anyway, okay. Poroshenko was a literal Putin puppet. The guy's daughter, her godfather, is Vladimir Putin. So when he won, it was a little, and he won under suspicious circumstances. Anyways, so Poroshenko was the president before Zelensky. He was a Putin puppet. The guy before him, Yanukovych, and I'm probably pronouncing that very wrong, but the guy before him was obscenely corrupt. This is the guy. This guy was. He was basically taking all of the tax money and just buying like personal shit with it. Went to the point like this guy was so corrupt. There was an actual, like, civil war, revolutionary style war. That's a dumb phrase. Anyways, they had a literal, actual revolution. They fought his police forces and his military forces, and overthrew him. The guy used so much of the country, like they turned his villa into a museum to kind of like put on showcase all the crap that this guy bought with their taxes. So they oust him. Poroshenko gets in office. Poroshenko is literally a Putin puppet. They hold an election in the 4-year intervals like they normally do. He wins, but it's very suspicious. It's like 85% of the vote, if I'm remembering correctly. Everyone's like, what? It's criticized like globally. So they hold another election, and this time it's like there's like not countries. I'm sorry. There's like 4 bodies that deal with this globally that like make sure it's a legit election, and Zelensky wins with like 70% of the vote. And Zelensky wins because he runs on an anti-corruption platform. So that's who Zelensky is, right? And he like follows through on the platform that he ran on. He does a bunch of interesting things. I'm not going to go into it because it has very little to do with what we're talking about. I do recommend looking up what he's done. I think it's great stuff. I actually wish that the rest of the world would kind of like model certain things after what he's done. But anyways, so Zelensky has been president for 6 years? I forget. Okay, I don't know how long he's been. Anyway, Zelensky won on an anti-corruption platform. He's very, very popular. The guy he took over was a literal Putin puppet, and the guy before him was super corrupt. So the idea that Russia can install a puppet government and not have the Ukrainians like just like oust that one too is a little silly, to be honest. Like, but anyways, yeah. Skip. I'm sorry. That was I need to stop doing this rambling thing because there's a lot of back stuff going on here. But yeah, like the idea that Putin can just install a puppet government in Ukraine, which literally just ousted a puppet government, a Russian puppet government in Ukraine. I don't see that flying. Like but to be fair, Russia is pretty good at misinformation campaigns. So, anyways, back to what he's saying.
So that's why they don't want to destroy Ukraine or harm the Ukrainian populace. They want to capture path. Change the political leadership, and then let it go. Of course, because they don't want to manage Ukraine. They don't want it to be a burden on them. They don't want that long term. And so, what are they doing? They are rapidly invading the whole country, and everybody concedes that they're moving very, very quickly. But they're not hitting any civilian infrastructure. They're only hitting military targets.
Okay, so this is not confirmed. This is, and they're, okay, I shouldn't say that. How do I phrase this? So, the largest nuclear reactor, is it in Europe or is it just in Ukraine? I forget. But there's a very big nuclear reactor in Ukraine, in eastern Ukraine, specific. Like, I'm pretty sure it's in these regions. Yeah, it was on fire like 2 days ago, or a day ago, or maybe even still today. But anyways, it was attacked. Now, the claim is that the right-wing civil militias of the area, which there's uncertainty as to who attacked it, right? But the idea that the Ukrainian military would attack a nuclear reactor in their own country and set it on fire is a little... There's a lot of holes in that. The claim is that it's a right-wing militia that is... it's like some pro-Nazi... what are they... troop... I don't know the military terms, but yeah, so there's... The claim is that there's some right-wing group that is part of the national military, but they're localized in that region, and they're literally Nazis, and everyone in them, in the group, in the platoon, whatever it's called, are literally Nazis, and it's like 1,000 troops. And so the claim is that these are the guys who set it on fire because they want to kill the Russian... not population. There's like, because that part of the country is so close to Russia, it's like culturally Russian. But yeah, so they're trying to say like they're trying to kill all these like culturally Russian people and like cleanse the land. It's like ethnic cleansing is what the claim is, right? And while that's possible, it's a little suspicious that like, why would you do this to a nuclear reactor? Like, you have to fucking live here, right? But anyways, there is... Regardless, the fighting has damaged the nuclear reactor. Please tell me how the nuclear reactor is a military target, Coach. Like, this is just blatantly false. And this isn't the only thing that they've attacked. That's just like the most extreme example.
They are relentless in hitting the military targets, but always with a certain degree of caution. And I'll explain why in just a moment. But they're hitting military targets. They are avoiding civilian populations and civilian infrastructure. And when they go to a city or a destination, when they encounter any resistance from the Ukrainian army, any serious resistance, they stop and pull back.
Okay, I'm not sure about that last part where if they encounter serious resistance, they stop and pull back. But this idea that they're not attacking civilian targets is also not true. Like, there's plenty of footage of, like, Ukrainian civilians being attacked. Also, this is going to be very difficult for them to do that because, like, there are Ukrainian civilians picking up guns and shooting at them. Now, if you want to argue that, like, now that makes them combatants, okay. But I don't see any evidence that they're trying to avoid attacking civilian targets. There doesn't seem to be anything that bears this out.
What are they doing? They are encircling. That's their whole strategy. It's very simple. If you look at it now, you realize it. What the Russians are doing is that whenever they go to a major city, like Kiev, like Kharkov, and soon enough they're going to be in Dnipro, when they get to those cities, they go up to those cities, and they meet some resistance, and then they pull back. And they allow their forces to start to surround it. That's the strategy they're employing in Kiev. That's the strategy that...
It really bothers me that he pronounces it Kiev, despite the fact that it's Kiev, and like if he's in Ukraine, which he claims he's in Ukraine when he's doing this, the fact that he wouldn't have been corrected on that at some point while he's there is.
But they're employing the army. They are encircling cities, and once they've completely encircled them, what will they do? They'll wait. That's what they do. See, if you surround a city, all you have to do is just wait around. Eventually it'll fall. Of course.
Wait. Okay, this is really important. Why do they fall when you surround them? What are you waiting for? It's siege warfare. And yes, this is he's correct in that this is how you can capture cities. But what do you wait for? You wait for them to run out of supplies. Now, that can be their military supplies, so they just can't shoot at you when you walk into the city. This could be their food supplies, so they're too weak to fight. But you have to wait for them to run out of supplies. Well, how long does that take? Well, that depends on how well stocked they are. Now, if this is guns and ammo, and it's just a city that wasn't expecting to be fighting, that could be fairly quickly. But then you have to deal with guerrilla fighters, right? You can turn alcohol and a cloth and a lighter into a bomb called Molotov cocktails, right? Like, this is like iconic resistance weaponry. Pretty sure a city will have a good deal of alcohol and a good deal of cloths and lighters. So if you're waiting for them to run out of military supply or like combat supplies, it's going to be a little difficult, right? So then what are you waiting for them to run out of? Food and water. Okay. Well, are you going to let the population starve? If your goal is to take this city and then absorb the population, you can't let people die from starvation. It's probably a bad idea. So he's contradicting himself if he's claiming that they don't want to cause any harm to the civilians, but then they take cities by encircling them and then quote unquote capturing them. What is the process of capturing them, you idiot? Sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
And so the Russians are systematically surrounding all of the major cities. And whenever they come across a smaller town or a village, they just advance and cover it and capture it and move on and continue with their advance.
Oh, it's going to bother me so much that he doesn't understand the mechanics of this, and he's claiming this is how they do it. How? I already talked about it. I'm going to let it go.
Whenever they meet any kind of serious resistance, they stop, pull back, and then encircle. One of the things that they want to capture intact, and people don't seem to realize this, very obvious, they are trying to capture the Ukrainian army. That's not why there hasn't been any major battles, hundreds of thousands of casualties.
Okay. The problem with that is this is why America has failed to take countries like Afghanistan and Syria, right? There's a quote going around from a UN official, and it's something to the effect of, if Ukraine stops fighting, there will be no more war. I'm sorry. Whoa, I got that I said that very, very wrong. That's not... If Russia stops fighting, there will no longer be a war. If Ukraine stops fighting, there will no longer be a Ukraine. So this idea that they can absorb the military, who clearly don't want Russia to have any sort of say in their political matters, that's not how this is going to end. Okay? So no, that's not how this is going to work.
It's been light skirmishes. For all intents and purposes, the Russian army is tiptoeing into Ukraine. Insofar...
Are they? Isn't there a convoy that's literally this was a couple days ago. Let me look into this. There was a convoy, Russia convoy to Kyiv. Oh, it's 40 miles long. Okay. Oh, I thought it was 4. All right. So there is... when was this? Is there a date? 3 days ago. Okay, so 3 days ago, there was a 40-mile long convoy just outside of Kyiv that hadn't moved in 3 days. So it hadn't 6 days ago is when it stopped, and it hadn't moved since up to 3 days ago. I don't know if there's been nothing else. Anyways, this is not tiptoeing. 40 miles of troops and weaponry and heavy well, I don't know if it's artillery, but like there's at least tanks in there, right? That doesn't sound like tiptoeing to me. And like they stopped, so like okay, that's the tiptoeing. No, they stalled. So this is and this is like where a lot of the points about like they weren't ready to do this and like they weren't trained on this kind of warfare. And anyways, they've had like tires going flat. They've had Russian soldiers literally leaving equipment because to get it up and running took too much effort, and they didn't want to have to deal with fighting the Ukrainian army to keep it. They couldn't like yes, there were modern roads, but they couldn't they've like set up traps in the roads, and they can't take the ground. They can't go off the main roads because the ground is mud, and their vehicles won't like go over it properly. So like no, this isn't tiptoeing. What are you? Are we looking at the same?
As far as air power is concerned, the Russians in the first 3 hours wiped the Ukrainian skies of everything.
Hold the phone. Russia controls airspace over Ukraine. Now, I know this was the expectation because they have a shit ton more equipment. Yeah. Oh, well, it's February 28th. That was a while ago. Russia slow to win Ukraine's airspace, limiting more games. Now, this article was written on February 28th, so, like, that's been a while. But, like, no, they don't control the airspace. Like, I don't want... Literally denying reality. Whatever.
The Russians own Ukraine.
This wasn't... I keep getting stuck on, like, the minutia of what he's bringing up. And this isn't even the manipulative stuff that I wanted to talk about.
Flying is Russian.
That's not true! Oh my god.
But insofar as their army is concerned, this isn't World War II. This isn't a World War II where the Russian armies were you know, I mean, just kissing cousins of the Mongol hordes. You know what I'm saying? No, this is the modern Russian army that has the goal of capturing intact.
What? Okay. That is such a stupid statement. Russia had tanks in World War II. Russia had guns in World War II. They weren't like the American military. They weren't like the German military. Sure. But it wasn't like they fucking rode horses and used bows. And it wasn't like their equipment was like ridiculously out of date. They just weren't a military, like... I shouldn't say a military super... They did not have a strong military. They did not have a focus on their military the way other countries did, like Germany, right? That's what drove their freaking economy, for crying out loud. So it drove the American economy. Well, it didn't drive the American economy then, but like, yeah, Russia had tanks. Ugh.
Ukraine and the Ukrainian army, because the Russians realized that once they have captured Ukraine and changed the political leadership, they will need an army to protect and look after the Ukrainian state and the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian land. They don't want to destroy the Ukrainian army. They could do that if they wanted to. They would have done that already. They own the skies over Ukraine. Their goal is to capture Ukraine, capture the Ukrainian army with as little casualties as possible to the Ukrainian army. And that's why whenever they come up against serious Ukrainian resistance, they keep consistently pulling back. And in the West, this is interpreted as the Russians are weak. It's so weird. It's like the Russians are so weak, they're not advancing as fast. I mean, well, that is a separate issue that I'm going to get to in just a moment.
No, it's not that they're weak. It's that... Okay, so this is why it was important to establish that, like, the narrative about Russia being this big military superpower was important, because we have painted the image of Russia being a very strong military, where, like, if we fought them, it would be difficult to beat them for decades. It's not that, like, oh, Russia's military is weak. It's maybe they're not as strong as we thought they were. Because, again, they have vastly superior numbers in troops and in equipment. And I mean every part of equipment. I'm talking heavy weaponry, we're talking artillery, we're talking air power, all of it, right? It's not that this makes Russia weak. It's that, wait a minute, shouldn't you guys be walking all over them? Shouldn't this not even be a fight?
But the Russians are so weak because they're not obliterating the Ukrainian army. Because that's what the Americans do. They obliterate anything that crosses their path. Friend or foe, they don't really care. But the Russians do care. That's why they're not obliterating the Ukrainian army when they could. A friend of mine, Alex Christoforou, in the Duran Late Show, he pointed out something that I'd never considered, which is very obvious. He pointed out the fact that, you see, the current Ukrainian leadership in the military, generals in Ukraine, they went to military academies with the generals of the Russian armies.
I screwed myself.
Since when they were back in like 18-year-old, 19-year-old leagues. They know each other. They don't want to kill each other. Of course not. I mean, you've got some buddy when you were drinking out when you were 18, right? You want to kill him? No. You could be on opposing sides of whatever contest that you want with him. Of course not. You'll be pissed off at him maybe, but you don't want to kill him. The Russian army doesn't want to destroy the Ukrainian army. They could have done it already. In these 3 days of combat, once the Russians owned the skies over Ukraine, they could have done whatever they wanted with the Ukrainian army. They could have annihilated just...
Okay, so he's wrong. They don't control the skies. But because he thinks they do, this is where the rest of his view on this comes from. Well, if they control the skies, that means they can just do whatever they want to the people. Okay, but they also could have just wiped them out with nukes too. So, like... Anyways, this isn't even the part I wanted to talk about.
And blown away the entire population of Ukraine if they wanted to. They could cause a major humanitarian crisis if they wanted to, and they obviously don't. How do I know this? Because they haven't done it. They have had the opportunity for 3 days to do it, and they haven't done it.
Okay, but again, this requires that be the case, and that doesn't seem to be the case. So he's just factually wrong, which is incredibly frustrating.
I'm doing this stupid video from a hotel room in downtown Kiev, and I'm going to upload it to the internet. Do you think I'd be able to do it if the Russians were really serious about conquering Ukraine? They want to capture
Damn it.
Understand that. And understand that...
Oh my god. Oh my god! I fucking hate this shit.
That Putin and the Russians are like evil antichrist. You don't understand why the Russians are invading. And your political leadership, Boris Johnson, Joe Biden, all these people, they don't want you to understand.
Wait.
Of course not.
3,
They want you to just demonize,
4.
just to take the easy way out. They want you to imagine that this is a Marvel comic book movie. And that, you know, there are white hats and black hats. Good guys, bad guys. Yeah, gotta kill the bad guys.
Okay, this is true. But this is what every country does. Russia is literally trying to claim that Ukraine is being run by Nazis. Zelensky's Jewish. So, like... And it's funny that he only talks about, like... So he's defending Russia. He's literally defending Russia. This is. Let's make no mistake. This is what he's doing. He's defending Russia. So it's funny that he talks about Well, we paint them as Marvel comic book movie supervillains. What do you understand what Russia's doing? Do you hear what they're saying about Zelensky and about the Ukrainian military? About why they're in Ukraine? Or why they're claiming to be in Ukraine? Like, this.
We're the good guys, yeah. So naive. The Russians don't want to harm.
Yes, it is naive. It's very naive, and I'm surprised you believe it. Oh.
Would have destroyed Ukraine if they wanted to, but they don't. They want to capture it in one piece. Now, you can say that Russia's motivations, this, that, the other. You have to look at the practical reality that is taking place now. What really bothers me, and perhaps this isn't a wise thing for me to say while I'm still in Ukraine under the Zelensky regime.
Okay, there it is. This is the manipulative language. So, what is the difference between a regime and an administration? Well, technically, not much, right? Regime is a reference to a power structure. Administration is a reference to a power structure. These are both the upper echelons of the political system that control the country. But the context of these words, or not the context of these words, the connotation of these words, sorry, wrong word. The connotation of these words is very important. Regime has a negative connotation attached to it. Administration has a neutral or positive connotation attached to it. Okay? This is why it was really important that they talk about the Biden regime and the Trump administration. So whenever someone uses the word regime, instant red flag to whatever the fuck they're talking about. And I mean anybody. So anyone who calls it the Trump regime, same thing. The words you use to describe a thing are very important because you can use neutral words and you can use I don't want to say poisoned words, but you can use weighted words, right? The way something is described or the words used in place of, like, what words are used in place of others is very, 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 very important. This tells you what the person's view of the group is, or the person, which is going to inform where their opinions come from, right? So anytime someone uses the word regime, unless they're talking about the Nazi regime, because that was actually a regime, looking back at a historical fact, just like the Maoist regime and so on and so forth, right? It is very difficult to call something a regime until you have confirmation that what they were doing was, I don't want to say evil, because that's a loaded word, but like harmful to their citizens, right?
What really bothers me is that the Zelensky regime has no trouble causing a humanitarian crisis. In fact, they welcome a humanitarian crisis. They would love to see dead Ukrainians. And I know this for a fact. And you know how I know this for a fact? Because the Zelensky government has been handing out AK-47s willy-nilly to the civilian population. As I understand it, they've already handed out 10,000 AK-47s.
Okay, so then let's examine that. Why has he been handing out AK-47s? Or sorry, I say he, like he's literally the one handing them out. So why has the Ukrainian government been handing out AK-47s to their citizens? Is it because the country is being literally invaded, because that's what this is, regardless of what the reasoning is, right? Just like Afghanistan was the U.S. invading Afghanistan, just like our presence in Syria is an invasion, so on and so forth, right? A foreign military presence in a country is an invasion. Period. End of story. Unless they were invited there by the current political powers, foreign troops in another country is an invasion. So, is it possible that the country is being invaded by a foreign power, and the citizens are choosing to rise up against that foreign power to keep their country the way it is? Or are they being forced to fight? There's a difference between giving citizens who would like to become armed to fight off a foreign invader guns and conscripting soldiers and forcing them to fight. Very big difference. Huge distinction. These are not the same things.
And munitions to match. Now, you see,
That was a dumb statement. If you're going to give them guns to fight, of course you're going to give them munitions. Oh my
if
god.
you've never had any kind of military experience, you, with a weapon like that, you can become extremely dangerous to all the people around you and to yourself. It takes training to operate a firearm. You have to know what you're doing.
Yes and no. Yes, it takes training, but does it take like what how long is boot camp? How long is army basic training? There we go. How long is army basic training? About 10 weeks. Okay, but what do you learn while you're in army basic training? What you learn in basic training army. Okay, so it's not just handling a weapon that you learn in basic training. You learn teamwork. This is, and I'm reading from Military One source. Teamwork, discipline, how to handle weapon, repel, and march. Okay, this is a lot of stuff. How long does it take? How long does it take to learn to use a rifle? Okay. So I'm seeing it takes about 40 hours to learn how to use a handgun. Yeah, so 40 hours. That's a 7-day work week. If your country's under attack, I'm sure the 8-hour workday doesn't really count. But yeah, like, and that's to learn additional things besides point and shoot, right? Like the reason why guns are the mainstay of a fighting force is because they're easy to use. Doesn't take a lot of understanding to point the weapon and pull the trigger. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't be trained how to use guns if they're going to use them. I'm just saying, like, if you're desperate, you can put a rifle in someone's hands and tell them this is where you pull the trigger, point it, and fire, right? Because a bullet coming out of a gun from someone who's trained for years versus someone who's just been handed to it, if it hits a person, it's going to hit a person. It does the same amount of damage to your tissue, regardless of who's firing it. All that matters is the aim. The rest of the training is how to be safe with it while you're around people you're not trying to kill. Sure. But, like, anyways.
It's not a casual thing. Okay? It's not like in the movies. It's very, very dangerous. And you can harm yourself before you harm anybody else. Harm you can cause to others. It's incalculable and can't be happen.
Okay. And while that's all fair, this is in the context of your country's being fucking invaded. So, like, is that really a concern? Oh, to be fair, though, this is what he's saying is also under the pretext that the Russians aren't trying to harm civilians. Therefore, as a civilian, why would you fight them? But this is also under the pretext that he sees the current administration as evil. Literally, the video title says, "And why Zelensky is evil." So, like, bro, white hats, black hats.
Now, the Zelensky regime is handing out these weapons, teaching people how to use Molotov cocktails, how to make Molotov cocktails, and use them themselves. They want to foment the people to fight the war against the Russians. The thing is, even
Okay, but again, their country's being invaded. How many of these people are volunteers? How many of these people are reservists? Like,
Russians have professional soldiers. These professional soldiers, they carry a weapon, they know what to do with the weapon. civilian in an AK-47, they're going to shoot it.
Are they, though? I thought you said they were trying to not hurt the civilian populace. Thought you said that that when they come into resistance, they pull back. Which one is it? Also, I heard somewhere that Russia is conscripting. Is Russia conscripting for Ukraine conflict? Oh, Ukraine conscripts. No, okay. I heard somewhere that Russia was conscripting, but... Which I'm like, why would they? They have a fairly large military. But anyways. Yeah, so... The context of arming civilians is that their country's being invaded. Pretty sure you'd support arming civilians if the United States was being invaded by China. Or Russia. Also, you just said earlier that the Russian military doesn't want to hurt the civilian population or the military or the Ukrainian military because they want to absorb them. So which one is it?
Okay? And so that civilian will be dead, and that will present a great photo op.
Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but rules of engagement, and I don't know if Russia follows this, but rules of engagement are you do not fire until fired upon, right? As a professional soldier, because you're trained in how to fucking kill people, you're held to a higher expectation of what to do when you encounter, quote-unquote, the enemy, and the enemy is not professional military, right? So are they just going to shoot anyone they see with a gun as soon as they shoot them, in which case I believe that goes against military conventional rules, which means that's a war crime, because you're shooting civilians. Like, he's contradicting himself in, like, every statement he makes from this point on.
So that Zelensky can wrangle some European country or the Americans or whomever to come in and get involved in this war and potentially escalate the situation to levels that are unimaginable. Does Zelensky...
Wait. Levels that are unimaginable? What more? Russia is invading Ukraine. How much more can this escalate for the Ukrainian people besides, like, nukes and carpet bombing, right? Dumb statement.
Well, to put civilians, to encourage civilians to do something that incredibly dangerous and irresponsible. The Zelensky regime has also put
I think I skipped or jumped back a little too far forward.
in and get involved
Yeah.
in this war and potentially escalate the situation to levels that are unimaginable.
Okay, except he's already been petitioning all these countries for aid, and all, like, the entire world is in support of Ukraine against Russia because this was an aggressive invasion by Russia with stupid justifications, and they're doing everything except sending in their actual troops. They're giving them weapons, they're giving them money, they're giving them supplies, they're sanctioning Russia, hoping that the economic burden will make Putin pull his troops back. Like, they are doing everything except sending in their literal own troops. So how much further can this escalate?
The Zelensky regime is doing something frankly evil because it is evil to put civilians, to encourage civilians to do something that incredibly dangerous and irresponsible.
They're being invaded. It is a foreign invasion force literally trying to take control of their country. Additionally, there's a lot of articles that are talking about the people who the Zelensky administration is arming are volunteer forces. This is so disjointed from the actual... And again, the loaded language. What they're doing is evil. Oh, arming the civilian population to resist an invasion force? That's evil?
The Zelensky
Or is it evil because you don't like the Zelensky administration and want to paint everything they do in this negative light? Like, this is 100% working backwards from his conclusion. He doesn't like Zelensky. He doesn't like Zelensky's policies. And I don't know why the hell he's defending Russia, right? Putin is a disgusting human being. And what Russia allows within its borders, the discrimination against gays, the execution of gays, the like, who the fuck was the guy in Russia that like rounded up Russian gay concentration camps? Or was that Belarus? Am I getting these? Anti-gay purges in Chechnya. Oh, Chechen Republic. My bad. But they're part of the Russian Federation. That's why. Okay. But, like, they're allowing this within their own borders. They're killing people. They're allowing people to kill other people because they're gay. Like, that's not evil? But arming civilians who want to defend their homeland from a foreign invasion force, that's evil?
The regime has also put heavy weaponry in civilian populations. Now, these heavy weapons, howitzers and whatnot, they're dangerous. And so the Russian army has every right and obligation to destroy such heavy weapons. And of course,
Okay. And this is the Israel defense, right? When Israel blows up the freaking, what was it, the something press, Israel, Palestine press building rocketed by Israel. Yeah, okay. Israel launched a missile strike on a press building in Gaza under the claim that that's where... what the fuck is the group called? I'm sorry. That's it. The Associated Press. What was the claim? Hamas. That's the name of the group. The Israel Defense Forces said that its fighter jets struck the tower because it also contained military assets belonging to Hamas, the Palestinian militant group that rules the Gaza Strip. So collateral damage is okay? Is that what you're saying? Or should there be, I don't know, some rules about what the military needs to do, what a military needs to do when dealing with enemy combatants around civilians? It's almost like there's freaking rules around this shit.
first, when you're trying to destroy such weapons, it's inevitable that you're not going to quite hit the weapons. You're going to hit around the weapons. And therefore, if these weapons are in the middle of apartment complexes, you're going to have Russians shelling apartment complexes, killing innocent civilians. The Zelensky regime is putting these weapons in the middle of populated areas precisely because they want to have this happen.
Or is it more likely that their cities are being attacked? Oh my god. This is so stupid. This is so... I try to stray away from like these personal levels of attack, but this is so incredibly stupid. I cannot believe the absolute lack of critical thinking involved in this analysis.
I'll tell you something else that the Zelensky regime is doing. They are forcibly conscripting men between the ages of 18 and 16. They are not...
Are they forcibly conscripting, or are these is Ukraine what is it? Ukraine conscripts volunteers? Volunteers lined to join the Ukrainian army. Zelensky's call for volunteers to defend Ukraine heeded by thousands from abroad. From abroad? Volunteer troops can be a curse, not a blessing. Dozens of Ukrainians signed up to fight for their country. Ukraine tries recruiting Israelis. French volunteers rally. Like, literally, people from other countries are volunteering to go fight the Russian army in Ukraine. You think the Ukrainian people, who like Zelensky, what is his approval rating? Zelensky's approval ratings. More than 90% of Ukrainians approve of their leader, compared with just 31% before the Russian invasion. I thought he had higher numbers than that. Really? That's a surprise. But didn't he? Zelensky's vote count. Also, it's hilarious to me that he was a comedian before he became the president. Yeah. Okay, maybe it's just because Poroshenko was so disliked. But he won with 73% of the vote. Well, okay, whatever. But yeah, like, his approval rating is 90%. And sure, that's now because fucking Russia invaded and he's standing up for him. But like, he currently has 90% approval. I'm pretty sure that the vast majority of people who are taking guns from this administration are doing so willingly. Again, their country is being fucking invaded. Anyways.
Not allowing them to leave the country, and if they try to leave the country, they are arrested and forcibly conscripted, that is, forcibly put into the Ukrainian army.
Let's fact check this. Forced conscription. Ukraine. Came brought in state of emergency. Starts drafting reservists. Okay, here we go. Men banned. Ukrainian men have been banned from leaving the country as conscription orders are imposed. Restriction statement. In Ukraine, our president announced the compulsory conscription of all guys for the war. It's awful. This is a person. Chunky? Never heard of. Anyways. Because he started calling up reservists. Oh, it's okay. This is where this comes from. National military service is compulsory in Ukraine for people aged 20 to 27, with reservists on standby until 65. Ukrainian male citizens who are physically qualified for military service over 18 years old and older, but who have not reached the age of 27 and who have no right for exemption from military service, will be conscripted. A former military duty and military service decree read. Okay, so while I think this is bad, this is the normal way that they deal with their military. You're a reservist until you're 65, which means they can call you up in times of emergency, and you are required to serve in national military service from age 20 to 27. Now, I think that's bad, but he's not doing anything outside of what the norm is for the country in the first place. Also, if your country's being invaded and you have national required military service from ages 20 to 27, if you're leaving the country, that's called going AWOL.
Now, what has happened because of this? Well, just about every man between the ages of 18 and 60 is running away from the cities. That's why there are so many refugees. It's not that they're seriously thinking that the Russians are going to shell and destroy their apartments or their homes. They're afraid of getting arrested and forcibly conscripted. The women...
Oh my god, I am so...
are having to fight against men who are between the ages of 18 and 60.
I'm going to fact check this. Ukrainian men fleeing Russian conflict. Russian invasion displaces Ukrainians who fled Donbass conflict. You mean the people who live in the area that are the front lines of the fighting? They ran away from where the front lines of the fighting are? What? Nearly 20,000 Ukrainians flee Russian conflict so far. They're not leaving the country. They're leaving the area where the fighting is. Because they're... Oh my god. Oh my god. This is so factually incorrect. I am literally going to scream.
And by the way, this isn't something that I heard. People that I know personally. People that I do business with. I know them. I've gone drinking with them, eating with them, doing deals with them. They've had to leave Kiev for fear of being forcibly pressed into the Ukrainian army.
Okay, wait. Why do they only need to leave the capital to be pressed into service? That does the regime not have enough power to enforce this forced conscription throughout the entire country? Can they only do this in the capital? Do they not have branch offices for their military in other parts of the country? Can they not send people to go door to door to grab these men and shove a gun in their hands and then send them off to go fight? This is so, oh my god. I'm gonna fucking scream. Also, anecdote Andy, just because you know people doesn't mean that's everybody, doesn't mean that's the trend, doesn't mean that's generally how things are going. And, like, I'm not saying that this isn't true, because there may be individuals that this is true of. But, again, this is why you have to look at data, this is why you have to look at trends, this is why you have to look at information. Stories, individual stories, do not give you the whole picture. This is so dumb.
Middle-aged men, farts like me, who are out of shape, we're real good at some business deal, but crappy at carrying a backpack and a weapon, with no experience whatsoever in such activity.
They're reservists until 65. This is the expectation for all of them. I don't know how to tell you this, but because they live in Ukraine and they haven't moved away from the country, and this is the country's laws, this isn't like evil. This is just the country doing what their laws say to do. And again, I can disagree with that, but like, how do you change laws? You vote in people who change the laws. Pretty sure they had an election pretty recently, right? When was the election? 2019. Oh, okay. His term's almost up because it's 2022. But like, again, this is the guy that won 73% of the vote. So like, clearly yeah, it could be that that other guy was just that bad. But like, whatever. Let's just keep going.
And the Ukrainian government, the Zelensky regime, is doing it. And why do you think they're doing it? Well, first of all, you don't forcibly conscript men into your army if you think that you're weak.
No. Oh my god. Russia's active military members exceed the number of total military members, including reservists, for Ukraine. What is... Can I bring up the map? Ukraine, Russia map. There's a really good map I saw that was... Oh, here we go. This one's good. Oops. Oops. Do that. This is Ukraine versus Russia. Ukraine is the orange, Russia's the green. Let's go back to the wiki. Is there a... Here we go. Here are some numbers. Here's the population differences. I don't care about the square footage because that doesn't mean anything. GDP. Oh my god. Look at this. This is their GDP. Okay, here we go. Military strength. Nuclear warheads. Who cares if you're winning the battles? You're being invaded by a superior force in every conceivable way. And again, if Russia stops fighting, this conflict ends. If Ukraine stops fighting, there's no more Ukraine.
Number one. And number two, by having this forcible conscription, you scare all the men and you create, all on your own, a whole class of refugees, people fleeing the cities. They're not afraid of the Russians, they're afraid of the Ukrainian regime that is trying to press them into service.
Wow. That could not be a more stupid statement. Okay, this is how you can tell he's working backwards from his conclusion. There is literally guns and tanks and planes and bombs in the Donbass region. Donbass? Donbass or Donbass? Okay, that's too much. I'm not seeing it on here, so... Anyways, I apologize if I said it wrong. But there is literally 2 modern militaries fighting in this region. That means tanks, that means jet fighters, that means helicopters, that means missiles, that means artillery, that means heavy weaponry, that means, like, it's a literal modern battlefield. So yes, of course people are going to flee where the fighting's coming from. He's claiming people are Ukrainians fleeing Kyiv. Russian bombs as civilians are killed in small Kyiv suburb. Russian artillery kills Ukrainian civilians fleeing suburb. Ukrainians fleeing town near Kyiv caught in shelling. So let's look Ukrainians fleeing conscription. Let's because his claim is that they're leaving because they're being conscripted. Men who flee Ukraine on foot say conscripts are dragged. Actually, okay. Let's look at an article that actually agrees with me because this is like way far down. So got it. I don't care. Oh, I can't read it because I'm. So if anyone wants to fact check me on this, what's this? Metro.co.uk has an article about men are being dragged into conscription. But most of the articles that I'm seeing here are, even with in the Google search, Ukrainians fleeing conscription, flee borders to escape Russian troops, fearing martial law, conscription following Ukraine invasion. Some Russians try to flee abroad. What else am I seeing here? Ukrainian guarding state of emergency calls it military. This just feels like they're calls it military reservists. This doesn't say. This is literally just like, oh, they're calling in the reserves. No one wants to die. Dragging suitcases. Ukrainian flee. Dragging suitcases. Ukrainian flees to Hungary. Yeah. So like, are some people not wanting to be forcibly conscripted, which is what it is when you're a reservist and then you don't show up for duty, called being AWOL. Like, I can't even. There's just so much of that to get into. This is just such bad. Anyways, he's lying. And it's really easy to paint the person that you want to paint as bad guy when you make shit up.
And so you see all the video images of people fleeing the city, and you in the West, you in the United States and Western Europe think, oh, they're afraid of the Russians. No, they're afraid of the Zelensky regime.
No, they're not. You just want them to
I'd
be
say
because
that
you don't like Zelensky.
the issue of handing out weapons to civilians who don't know how to handle them, that is the thing I find most despicable. Because they are willing to have these poor civilians who know nothing of weaponry become...
Wait. Okay, hold on. This is super important. Because this just clicked. Military service is required from all Ukrainian citizens from... Is it just men? Ukrainian national military service requirement. Military service mandatory in Ukraine. In addition to mandatory military service, civilians are reportedly... Oh, well, that's not what I wanted. But it is... I mean, technically it is. Okay, mandatory military service. Ukraine requires women to register for military conscription. Oh, Black Rifle Company. I wonder who... I'm actually curious which side of this they're on. Anyways, Ukraine's Ministry of Defense is simply expanded the pool of Ukrainian women who are registered for possible military troops in the Mediterranean war. According to an update, this was in 2021. It's funny. According to data regulation, when in effect, women 18 to 60 who are fit for military service and work in a broad range of professions required to register for. It doesn't tell me because I literally read it from. Damn it! Well, whatever. I read it earlier, but it sounds like it's mandatory for all Ukrainians to serve in the military for 7 years, and this is not unusual. There's a lot of countries that do this. Korea does this. Does Japan do this? Japan required military service. Oh, here we go. Countries with mandatory military service. Let's look at this over. Countries with mandatory military service: Algeria, Angola, Argentina, Armenia, Austria, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Belize, Benin, Bhutan, Bolivia, Brazil, Cambodia. Let's just skip down to Ukraine. Ukraine, 12 to 24 months for ages 20 to 27. Turkmenistan, Turkey. Like, how many is this? A lot. 1, 2, 3. I don't want to count this. This is like easily 60 freaking countries have required military service, which means every man. Okay, maybe this is just me being a spoiled American, but I don't like the idea of mandatory military service. But it seems to be pretty commonplace. That's very interesting. Anyways, so yeah. They're arming untrained civilians. Are they? Because it sounds to me like, at the very least, all of the men who were required to have military service for 12 to 24 months from the ages of 20 to 27, and I'm pretty sure you train your freaking military to use weapons. Yes? Like, I hate this. I hate these people. I can't believe... This guy has 316,000 subscribers. He is just factually wrong on every single statement he has made in this video. And he has 300,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel.
Martyrs. Because the Russian soldiers who see some civilian with a gun, well, what do you think he's going to do? He's going to shoot him. And that innocent civilian who doesn't even know how to hold a damn gun is going to die needlessly for nothing, for absolutely nothing. And I find that despicable. I find that truly.
Okay, I'm not being shot at, so I need to.
Also, the Zelensky regime can get a nice photo. That's what's going on.
This is so stupid.
And if you want to say that the message I'm saying is pro-Russian or pro-Putin or I'm a Putin stooge or useful idiot or whatever, I don't care. I don't care your opinion, man. I don't give a fuck what you think about me. I'm telling you the truth. I'm here. I'm here in Kiev, in the downtown, waiting for the Russians to invade the damn place, huh? So I know what I'm talking about.
Do you, though? Because I, a nobody, a literal nobody, have been able to demonstrate that every single statement you've made about what's going on is factually incorrect. The Russians do not have control over the skies in Ukraine. The Russians are attacking civilian targets. Oh no, I'm sorry. He's not. He hasn't lied. The conscription thing. They're pressing their reservists into military service. Or the claim is that all men of fighting capability are being pressed into military service. That's because every one of them has served in their military. It is required of every man, and I couldn't find anything about women, but it is required of every man to serve in the military for 12 to 24 months. And they're required to be maintained as a reserve force until they're 65. So unless they're pulling in like 80-year-olds and shoving a gun in their hands, like, you're right on a technicality, but you're still wrong, right? And then he said that, like, oh, the Russians just aren't trying to harm civilians. That's a lie. They've literally shelled freaking suburban areas. They're tiptoeing in. 40-mile convoy headed to Kyiv does not say tiptoe to me. God, he's just... There's nothing that he's said that's factually accurate.
Because I'm not following the American or European mainstream media, because I know this is just a pack of lies. But probably what I'm saying in this video, you haven't heard it. Well, now you're hearing it.
Okay, hold on. So I do need to back that up. You're not hearing it on the mainstream, the American or European mainstream media because he's telling you the truth. Is this possible? Yeah. Yes, this is possible. It is possible that the American and European media are lying about what's going on. This is entirely possible. They do it all the time. Is it likely? I would argue no. And is that because I believe those media sources? No. It's because the footage that is being shared on social media kind of shows that this is the case. And, like, yes, these are anecdotes, right? But these are coming from civilians. Like, these are the people who are being harmed by this, the people he claims to care about. So, like, it's telling to me that he says these people are being pressed into service when, are they? Sounds to me like they're volunteering. Sorry, I'm trying to... Oh, shit. You're in trouble. Can you get there? Oh, you can. Okay, cool. Whew. Sorry, I keep being distracted by the video and pausing and all that, so I just wanted to finish that up. Okay.
Huh? I mean, in this channel, what have I always told you, stupid motherfucker? Huh? Think for yourself. Think. Look at the information that you have available. And ask yourself why something is happening the way it's happening.
That's funny. Have we examined at all what Russia's motivations are for doing this? Have we examined at all what Putin's claims are as to why he's doing this? How factual those are? Have we looked at any of the information that shows that the Russians are being thwarted by a smaller, less sophisticated Ukrainian military, and why that smaller, less sophisticated military is being successful. No, we haven't looked at any of that. But he's the one telling you the truth. He's the one sussing out the lies, despite the fact that all I had to do was Google search to find that he's wrong. Like, okay. And so I guess I need to be super clear about this. Yeah, you should think for yourself. You should 100% think for yourself, right? However, because you are not a journalist, because it is impossible for you as an average person to get the kind of information that's necessary to make these detailed analysis, or to make a detailed analysis of what's happening in Ukraine on the ground, you have to rely on the information being provided by journalists, by people whose job this is. Could they be lying? Sure. They could 100% be lying. Could they be wrong? They can 100% be wrong. But that's like going to your doctor and then not believing what your doctor says. Right? Could your doctor be lying to you? Because they just want to give you a prescription or sign you up to take this, or not, I'm sorry, not sign you up. They refer you to go take this test because they get money off of it. Yeah, it's entirely possible. The problem is that we rely on the motivations of people doing the jobs that they do being for the right reasons, right? We rely on journalists being journalists because they are interested in reporting the facts. We rely on doctors being doctors. We rely on doctors being interested in helping people with their health. We rely on police enforcing laws because they want to keep neighborhoods safe. We rely on politicians passing laws because they want to do these things for the betterment of their country. Now, is this always the case? No. This is not always the case. It is entirely possible that these people are doing these things with selfish motivations in mind. Is that the vast majority of them? Well, of the examples I've given, I don't think that the vast majority of doctors are doing what they're doing just because they want money. I don't think the vast majority of cops are doing what they're doing just because they want to beat up on poor black people, right, and brown people, right? I don't think that the vast majority of politicians are passing laws that they're passing just because it enriches themselves. I genuinely believe that most cops who do what they do it because they think it makes their neighborhood safer. Just like I believe that most politicians pass the laws that they pass because they think it's going to make their country a better place. Is that always the case? No. And is it always the case that their belief that these things are for the betterment of what they think it is for, always the case? No. But they're human. Right? Humans are allowed to be wrong. I don't take fault with someone who believes that you solve a problem doing thing A, even if thing A doesn't solve the problem. I take issue with the people who convince them that that thing A is the solution when it's not. And I take issue with them not having the faculties, whether that's the information or the wherewithal or the critical thinking skills to examine the information that led them to that conclusion. But this is not these people are at fault and that's the end of it, right? Like, it's always more complicated than that. So let's just finish up what he's saying.
It's not arbitrary. It's not by chance. People have thought through what they are doing. The Russians have certainly thought through what they're doing.
Okay, so he is willing to talk about the Russians. But why is it that he's not talking about... Excuse me. When did he post this? February 20th. Okay. Wait, when did Putin give a speech? Putin's speech on Ukraine. Oops. Invasion reasons. Oh, this is great. I didn't realize this was this long ago. February 23rd, 11:50 p.m. In a Wednesday night speech, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that a special military operation would begin in Ukraine. Multiple news organizations reported explosions in multiple cities and evidence of large-scale military operations and evidence of large-scale military operations happening across Ukraine. Wow, I cannot read. So Putin gave a speech as to why they were invading Ukraine. I'm sorry. Initiating a special military operation that would begin in Ukraine. He gave a speech on February 23rd. Or no, that was reported on February 23rd, and it said Wednesday. So when was February 23rd? Oh, that was Wednesday. Okay, yeah. So he gave a speech 3 days before this video as to why he was invading Ukraine. Why haven't we examined that speech? Why have we not examined all the information I pointed out about the convoy being stalled? About how big the convoy is? About the shelling? About the control of the airspace? Like, he just spews this bullshit. And, like, I understand that he believes it, and so I'm not calling him a liar. Like, he thinks he's telling the truth. But why do we not examine the motivations of Russia? But we do examine the motivations of the quote-unquote Zelensky regime. Why do we paint Zelensky as evil when you literally made a point about black and white hats? Like, fucking... Oh, my God. I get so irritated at people and their lack of ability to think through what they're saying.
It's not by chance. People have thought through what they are doing. The Russians have certainly thought through what they're doing. The best that we can hope for is that the Zelensky regime fails in its attempt to wrangle in the Europeans and the Americans into this war. And the Zelensky regime collapses or flees or whatever, and Russia is able to take Ukraine in one piece without harming too many people. And that's the best that we can hope for. Or if not, the whole country will be destroyed. Millions of people will be displaced, hundreds of thousands, perhaps even millions killed. And this is the exact same thing that happened in Iraq. Let's hope that we don't have a second Iraq.
Okay, hold the phone. Hold the phone. Who was at fault for what happened in Iraq? Is it the U.S. who invaded under the pretext of what was that? Weapons of mass destruction that he didn't have? And who did we fight? Oh, that's right. We fought the Iraqis, the civilians who were fighting an invading army. Oh, God. I'm just going. He's only got a couple more seconds. Oh no, he doesn't say anything else. Okay, cool. Dear Lord. His video isn't even 20 minutes. This video is 18 minutes and 49 seconds. Now, I ramble because I'm not very good at this. But the problem is like, I have to explain prior information to then explain how he's wrong. It's taken me an hour and a half to go over his 18-minute video. So, he talked for, his 19, let's round up. Let's give him 20 minutes. So it took me an hour and 10 minutes to explain why his 20-minute video is wrong, where it's wrong, and how it's wrong. Piece by piece. And this is why the whole debunking a narrative is so difficult. This is why misinformation campaigns are so powerful. This is why deflecting narratives is so difficult. It is so easy to say a thing without the evidence, using the correct language to paint the picture that you want to paint. The Zelensky regime is forcibly, because his narrative is the Zelensky regime, this evil authoritarian government, is forcibly conscripting its civilians, shoving guns in their untrained hands, and then sending them off to go fight the Russians. Who are this, and I don't want to say peaceful because he never used that word, but he paints this picture of Russia tiptoeing in, being careful not to hurt the civilians, being careful not to attack civilian targets, being careful to not harm the Ukrainian military. None of this is accurate. None of this is factually accurate. None of it. Not a single, I shouldn't say word, but not a single point he made was factually correct. None of it. Not a single one. And it's all missing a ton of context. Let's just go over the conscription. They're required to serve in the military for 2 years. Every male citizen, I don't know about female citizens because I couldn't find any information on that, but every male citizen is required to serve in the military. And this is not unusual. A lot of countries do this. Okay? They're also required to be reservists until they're 65. Is that forced conscription? Is that shoving guns into the hands of untrained civilians? There's tons of articles about the volunteers, that the civilians of the Ukrainian citizens are volunteering to take up arms against the Russians. Because, shock and surprise, the Russians are a foreign invasion force. We went over, I shouldn't say we, but there's articles about how Russia has botched this. And his claim is that the West is saying Russia's weak. No, we're just surprised that they've botched this, considering that they're fighting the Ukrainians, who are a fraction of their size. And of course, the aggression campaigns are always more difficult than defensive campaigns. Fine. But Ukraine's been painted as this big military superpower that we, the Americans, need to be afraid of. And they're struggling against the Ukrainian military? Like, and then what else did he claim? Conscripts, evil regime, forcing guns in their hands. Oh, and then he didn't even go. They're surrounding the city and then capturing it. Yes, sure, that may be, and I don't know that is the tactic that they're using or not. I don't know, right? But what is the process of capturing a city once you've surrendered it? What is it that encircling a city allows you to do to capture it? You starve them of resources, whether that's food and water or whether that's armaments. Okay, which takes days. And if you're starving them of, it's one thing if you're starving them of armaments, but it's another thing if you're starving them of supplies, food and water. Because then people are dying because they're starving. And again, this is a foreign invasion. I can guarantee, without looking up a single article, that there are plenty of Ukrainian citizens who would rather starve to death than surrender to the Russians. Now, does that mean the majority of them? Does that mean all of them? Of course not. As a matter of fact, I would hope not. I would hope that these people value their lives more than defending the borders of a country. But nationalism is pretty strong. It's a pretty strong motivator. And a lot of people are very nationalistic. Or patriotic? Whatever. That doesn't really have a distinction in this context, right? So, he just lied. I shouldn't say lied, because again, he believes this. He just spouted factually incorrect information, and then opinions formed off of that factually incorrect information for 20 fucking minutes. And it took me over an hour to explain where he's wrong for this entire video. Okay. What's we got? Because I'm not going to bed for another 3 hours. I don't want to listen to a debate. I don't have the energy for that. Perrin finally did a Berserker video for Phoenix Point. Oh, here we go. Let's watch Lonerbox explain why Russia refuses to let Ukraine go. Okay, so to preface, I tend to agree with Lonerbox, like politically speaking. So I may not be as attuned to what he's going to be saying here. That is weighted language. But I'm going to attempt to do the same thing for a lefty.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time looking at this just yesterday and today mostly, but again, over the last few streams, you've seen me look over this stuff.
Okay, cool. This is great. So this seems to be a live stream and not a scripted videos, which is usually what he does, because a scripted video is a lot easier to catch that kind of language and then edit it out, which I hope most of them would do, or the other way around. See where you can plug in words that make things sound a way that you would like them to sound, to present information in a way that tints the exposure, for lack of a better way of explaining
Just
that.
like having this morbid curiosity with like why the fuck Russia's doing what it's doing. It's just such an anomaly to me. And like, I've tried like the whole thing with like steel manning the Russian nationalism and all the fears about NATO and all that, but it's like it seems to be the case, and I'm just confirming this more and more to myself, is that the more you try to understand the Russian position, like the worse it gets. The more you try to steelman and rationalize their behavior, just like it gets worse, not more understandable. Like it's kind of like Jordan Peterson, Initially, people would be like, "Oh, Jordan Peterson, that guy's stupid. He said this and this," and then they're like, "Oh no, but you should just watch the whole lecture." And then you watch the whole lecture, and you're like, "Yeah, I just hate this guy more now," because he produced like these insufferable fans who will force you to watch an entire lecture, and it won't like counter the problem that you brought up in the first place.
I'm gonna have a real hard time being critical of this. Okay, all right, so. All right, I do have to take issue with the fact that he said they're going to force you to watch a lecture, an hour-long lecture, and it's just going to be stupider and stupider. Like, okay, you're poisoning the well there, right? Like, and here, okay, so to be fair to Jordan Peterson, from a psychology perspective, he is correct. From a self-help perspective, he is correct. There is nothing the man has said on either of those topics that is inaccurate. Right? However, the problem with Jordan Peterson and the way he explains things is, and I think I've gone over this before, but I'll have to explain it again because this is how it always works. There are two kinds of arguments, or not arguments. There are two kinds of ways of describing things, especially when it comes to problems, right? So there's a descriptive claim and there's a prescriptive claim. So when we're looking at problems, the descriptive claim is this is what's happening. So for example, the rainfall in hills causes landslides. That is a descriptive claim. Water falling from the sky, rain, makes the ground turn to mud, which causes that ground to move down the hill. Okay, that is a descriptive claim. It is literally what is happening. And then there are prescriptive claims. Prescriptive claims are, what should we do about this? And the example I use is how he talks about women in the workforce. Okay, we don't know. The descriptive claims are, we don't know what the rules are anymore. Women haven't been in the workforce that long. The point of makeup is to mimic sexual arousal, to make them more attractive, so on and so forth, right? He makes a lot of descriptive claims when he talks about the problem. But he never tells you, or he never makes a prescriptive claim. What should we do to fix this? However, the way you make descriptive claims can lead a person to a prescriptive claim. So, if if I use my descriptive claims to talk about the landslide in a way that suggests that we shouldn't build houses there, even if I never say we shouldn't build houses there, my descriptive claims can lead you to the prescriptive claim that we shouldn't build houses there. I don't have to say it. It is yes, you are reaching that conclusion through conjecture, and yes, that it does mean assuming my position on the matter. But I can absolutely lead you to that conclusion without ever stating that conclusion. And this is what frustrates people about Jordan Peterson. This is literally what the man does. And you can see this in all of his arguments. He will never, outside of the actually even with the self-help stuff, right? So the self-help stuff is also super vague. Clean your room. Okay, what the fuck does that mean? I don't want to get into all of that, but like the major point here is he makes descriptive claims in a manner which leads you to a specific conclusion, a prescriptive claim. But because he never states the specific prescriptive claim that his descriptive claims will lead you to, he is then able to weasel out of, well, I never said that, when you ask him, so you're saying this is the solution. Okay? Yes, he didn't actually say that's the solution, but he 100% implied that's the solution. Is it possible to reach a different conclusion based on what he said? Sure. Is it likely? No. So, anyways,
like that, you know? But at the same time, I feel like the pro-NATO guys actually are just the pro-Ukraine guys, say, not fucking pro-NATO. Like, the pro-Ukraine guys are actually just so turned off by how bad the Russian arguments are that they've probably just, like, shut themselves off a little bit, even though I think understanding the Russian position is actually, like, it's actually, like, really helpful for the pro-Ukraine side. Like, I feel, like, more confident now in my position now that I understand, like, a little bit more why they're doing it, right? So, I actually prepared, like, a little fucking, almost like a slideshow. Well, just Google Doc thing, but, you know. Because when I was in college doing history, we were always told about this, like, discrepancy between studying history from the perspective of personalities and structures, right? So, personality being like, okay, did this happen because of the personality of whatever leader, or because of just like, did they lose their mind if it was like a king or something, or were they like power hungry, were they reluctant to engage in conflict when they should have, that kind of thing. And the other thing is structure, right? Like social institutions, economic pressures, things, you know, military strategy, things like that. So, and if you take like World War I, right? A personalities person would say that the Kaiser fucking was very nationalistic, naively nationalistic, tried to build an empire and found himself getting in the way of a much bigger empire that already existed, and then you've got tensions at the points where they both met, of the Balkans, and then you have a war. So that's the personality thing. And then you could say like a structuralist view would be something like you have a bunch of emerging industrial capitalist powers who eventually are expanding outwards beyond their own countries, and they meet at an inflection point that they both want. They try to play the locals to their side, and then you eventually have an outbreak like Franz Ferdinand, and then you get the war. And then like a pretty decent historian would probably like be able to sell you a pretty convincing like take on both of those perspectives, like, or even like they'd be able to convince you that it's a bit of both that did that, right? So when I think about like Russia, what I mean by structure, I'm probably misusing the word structuralist. I'll just say structures. Structures is the thing that motivates historical decisions. When it comes to personalities, I feel like the most popular views about Putin are, first of all, that he's doing this because he's just gone insane. He's lost his mind. He's lost his marbles. He fell off, plus L, plus Russian. He's pissing himself at all the meetings. He's like, He's scaring off everyone, all his the people that are close to him. He's randomly beheading people like arbitrarily, all that shit, you know. Putin's fucking off his rocker, right? I don't know how much evidence there is for that. He doesn't seem any more crazy than he's always been, so I don't know. It definitely does seem like his image as a slick, professional KGB man is starting to slip, but it doesn't necessarily mean like his mental state's changing. The other one is that he's just like a very classic imperialist, right? He actually did say that the biggest geopolitical catastrophe ever, like in living memory, was the collapse of the Soviet Union, right? He thinks it was worse than the Holocaust, apparently. His attitude towards Ukraine and even like especially Crimea is like very imperialistic. He basically thinks it's like rightful Russian land. He even like complained about the fact that like why Crimea was Ukrainian in the first place, and that's a really good example. Like because he's grabbing that from an old imperialist tradition. Like I've got here that like there were kind of 3 turning points for Crimea. In 1921, they were absorbed into Russia as an independent republic. They didn't have any ethnic majority for Ukrainians or Russians. The Tatar, like Muslim culture, was actually cultivated by the Russians in Crimea at the time. But in 1944, after Crimea was liberated from the Nazis, Stalin decided to basically do a purge. He forcibly deported the entire Tatar population of like 200,000 people in the space of a few days. He sent them to Uzbekistan forcibly. It's estimated that between like a quarter and half of them died on the way. So pretty brutal fucking move. And that's when Crimea became an ethnic Russian majority. In 1954, though, once Crimea was an majority ethnically Russian, Khrushchev transferred Crimea over to Ukraine. And part of his reasoning in doing that was that he wanted to provide some kind of counterweight to this emerging pro-Western Ukrainian nationalism. So Ukraine is developing a very separate identity from Russia. Khrushchev counters it by putting Crimea, a Russian majority, in part of Ukraine. And Putin basically, like, in his speech, decries that move. He thinks it should never have been done. So that's like one personality experience for like his move in Crimea. And then the last one, which I think is probably the most convincing, is that he's just high on success. Like, he's been there for 22 years. Even when Medvedev was in power, like, Putin was still making a lot of the decisions. He was still basically like star of the show. And as what happens with leaders who are successful for very long, is they become too big for their fucking. Wait, what? They buy, and there's probably like definitely in these two, like, these are very true, right? This I don't think really matters. Okay. Structural reasons. The first one that they keep on harping on is NATO. They think that like.
Okay. I do recommend watching this, and I am going to watch it on my free time, but this is not going to give me anything. I don't want to say he's careful with his language, and obviously I'm more likely to catch him using that kind of language in a live stream than... oh, you know what? I have a good lefty. Second thought. Let's go over... Okay. So second thought is a lefty. However, I take issue with how he does his videos. So let's do... That's Destiny going over the video. I don't want to do that. Okay. Philanthropy scam. Okay, so this video is why billionaire philanthropy won't solve anything.
This episode and others like it are made possible by the generous support of my patrons on Patreon. We just did a major overhaul of our patrons-only Discord server, so if you'd like to join our growing community and get early access to every video, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/secondthought.
Say the line, Bart!
Billionaires? Bad. Hello, dear viewer, charitable viewer, generous Patreon supporting, or at the very least subscribe button pressing and bell ringing viewer. Today we're talking about charity, and how something so bad can feel so good. Or actually, how something so good can be so bad. Except, of course, when you give your money to me on Patreon, because that's very different, and actually, you know what, just forget I brought it up. Today we're talking about philanthropy. We're talking about philanthropy because behind one of the most publicly uncontroversial things our society has produced hides a whole web of genuinely awful stuff. So, of course, it's important to talk about that. Anyway.
Okay. Not a major thing, but let's go back a couple seconds. In there, there we go. Okay, let's pay attention to what he says here.
Brought it up. Today we're talking about philanthropy. We're talking about philanthropy because behind one of the most publicly uncontroversial things our society has produced hides a whole web of genuinely awful stuff.
Okay, it's one word, but web. Now, this is not technically an incorrect way to use the word, right? It is a web. However, there is always a negative connotation attached to the word web. It is very rare in the instances in which you want to use the word with a positive or neutral connotation. Very rare.
So, of course, it's important to talk about that. Anyway, before we get started, yes, Hassan Minhaj did already make a wildly successful video on this topic. But as far as I'm concerned, he's only the second best Hassan, so it's like it doesn't count. And you know what? Forget Minhaj, because just like the better Hassan, we're actually going to say the C word. Capitalism. Because unlike what Minhaj implies, this is not just a story of people exploiting a broken system. This is a story of a system that can only survive because people exploit it.
Okay, so there's another word. Exploitation. Now, is this a factually correct statement? Yes. Are there other words used that you can use to say the same thing? Not on a technical level, but like you could make a similar statement without using the word exploitation. But again, exploitation or exploiting or any form of that word has a negative connotation attached.
But I'm getting ahead of myself.
So we're not even 2 minutes in, and the subject he's talking about, he's used the word web and exploit when talking about philanthropy.
Start with how the scam works. As a quick disclaimer, this video is based on the current general understanding of how government funding and taxes work. If you'd like to see an alternate theory, and one that I think holds a lot of weight, One Dime has a great video which I highly recommend watching. Now, imagine your name is William Henry Gates III. That name sucks, so let's go with Bill for short. It's 1999. You just heard the kid in The Sixth Sense was dead the whole time. And earlier today, the US government ruled your company, Microsoft, to be a monopoly and guilty of violating antitrust laws. The public is split. Some people idolize you and think you're a genius. The rest, well, they don't love that you're a dorky jerk with a bad attitude, or that you're well known for abusing temp workers, cutting medical benefits, suing those who quit, and a slew of anti-competitive business practices. And now they just found out that y'all went and gone did a crime. What do? Well, you do a whole bunch of stuff.
Sorry, I need to go back. I was paying too much attention again.
Jerk with a bad attitude, or that you're well known for abusing temp workers, cutting medical benefits, suing those who quit, and a slew of anti-competitive business practices.
Okay, so there was a lot in there, and again, these are factually accurate statements, but pay attention to the adjectives he's using, because like abuse temp workers. Again, he's not wrong. This is what happens. But always think about, is there another way you can phrase this that uses neutral language rather than negative language?
And now they just found out that y'all went and gone did a crime. What do? Well, you do a whole bunch of stuff to try to prove you're not a monopoly like bankrolling Apple in a desperate bid for competition. But you also do whatever it takes to get people to look away from the wreckage your company could become and the public image you're starting to get associated with. Luckily for you, there's an easy way to do that. What if you announced you were starting your own philanthropy foundation? The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Everybody loves philanthropy, It doesn't matter that you really only rebranded from the much too impersonal William H. Gates Foundation because, whoa, did you just dump a fat stack of cash into it for media attention? Good, because that totally works. It actually works so well that over the next 20 years, you'll become unrecognizable to the people who worked under you for decades and to the general public that didn't trust you. You'll become the guy who saves kids. That's point number 1 on the What Philanthropy Does checklist. Philanthropy takes people well known for being unredeemable and turns them into saints. People who, despite hoarding a sum of money big enough to outlive them 1,000 lifetimes, have given away a large enough amount to demand unwavering support from all of us, regardless of the fact that in the meantime, their wealth grows by more than they give. They get all of our support. All of it. Who today dares to say that Bill Gates hasn't made the world a better place? We could stop at that and we'd already have a pretty compelling argument. Bill Gates made all this money explicitly by being a horrible, ultra-competitive, inhuman businessman, exploiting his workers and a market he held a monopoly over just to turn around and launder his reputation with his ill-gotten gains.
That was a lot of loaded language there. A lot. So did you pay attention to how he described how Bill Gates got to where he is? A lot of negative language there. A lot. And he could have said all of that by simply saying questionable business practices. Right? That's neutral. And to be fair, nothing he's saying is factually incorrect here. But the loaded language is absolutely priming you to take on an image of Bill Gates that he wants you to take on.
Video over. Capitalism crushed. Come back next week. But there's more. Because there are at least 3 problems with high-profile philanthropy. 1, it costs the rest of us money. 2, it might not be happening at all, or really just a tiny bit. And 3, it actively breaks democracy. Fun! Let's hit point number 1 first. You're taking my money, big man. One of the big reasons philanthropists give so much is because of something called the charitable tax deduction, which for legal reasons, I am not technically explaining to you right now. Got it? This is just me talking out loud into my microphone, and if it reaches your ears, it's not my fault because I'm not giving you unqualified tax advice, you hear? I'm just talking to myself, which I can prove by saying my social security number out loud. 18326. By donating money to an approved charity, anybody can reduce the amounts they give in taxes to the government by reducing the amount of money they're being taxed on. For you and me, that number is usually limited to around 60% of our gross income, the total money we would have gotten before taxes are taken out. It's a way for the government to acknowledge that you're doing a good thing and reward you with a little less tax on your total gross income. For the ultra-wealthy, those rules technically also apply, but they also get special access to even better, more exclusive rules. The same way their bored apes get them access to better, more exclusive rooms in the metaverse for people who don't have any friends. For the ultra-wealthy, charitable deductions can be applied to stuff that's not money, and that only the wealthy have enough of laying around to just give away. Real estate properties, stock options, capital gains, that kind of stuff. On these assets, the value of which has never ever been hyperinflated and always definitely represents what it's worth, the ultra-wealthy can give to charity in amounts that are trivial to them, but that can end up reducing their taxes by up to 74%, according...
Okay, so this was important too. Let's go back over that.
On these assets, the value of which has never ever been hyperinflated and always definitely represents what it's worth, the ultra-wealthy can give to charity in amounts that are trivial to them, but that can end up reducing their taxes by up to 74%.
Okay, so never ever hyperinflated and amounts that are trivial to them. So again, for example, if I make $1 million and I donate 100,000, it's only 10% of my income. Plus, I still have $900,000 left. Yes, that's trivial, right? But this is again a loaded word, as is the hyperinflated, because are the values inflated? Yes. Are they hyperinflated? That's up for argument. And I don't necessarily disagree, but we should probably try to couch these things in neutral language rather than loaded language. Because We want to be factually representative of the information. And if we're going to use the argument that you need to be careful with your words so that you're not leading people to conclusions, you're not priming them to agree with you, you need to do so through neutral language.
According to these two academics who actually know what they're talking about, unlike the disembodied voice reading these words out loud to himself. And that's on top of all the other tax avoidance strategies that these ultra-rich parasites take on the corporate side of things, with tax haven companies and loopholes, and
Okay, ultra-rich and parasites.
the more individual-based avoidance schemes we learned about in the Pandora and Paradise papers. Concretely, though, what does using the charitable tax deduction like this mean? Well, it means that for every billionaire, quote, giving $1 to charity, we'll get to how much that actually happens in a second, you pay 74 cents of it. Because the truth is that if the government isn't getting those 74 cents on the dollar it was planning on getting, it's got two choices. It can either spend 74 cents less on stuff that you would benefit from, or it can get those 74 cents from you instead. Convenient how that works out. And while the 74-cent figure sounds trivial, the real amount is in the billions. Between 2010 and 2014, the cost the rest of us took on was $246.1 billion. Put all those zeros on screen. I don't care how much it cost me in graphics animation. And the thing is that that number has certainly only gotten bigger in recent years as charitable donations increase in size and deduction laws become more favorable to the ultra-wealthy. And look, if you divide those billions of dollars up evenly among all of us over the 5 years, it doesn't end up being a crazy amount per person. But it's money that was supposed to be used on us.
Ultra
and
wealthy.
that we weren't supposed to be paying for in the first place.
Sorry, I don't want to keep pausing the video, but like, so you have to pay attention to the words that he's using when he describes things that he wants to paint in a negative light and then things he wants to paint in a positive light. And I don't want to pause every single time.
We were supposed to benefit from that money, not have it taken out of our pockets. Because that's the second part of this whole thing. As much as billionaire-funded charities want to make it seem like they're actually giving away their dollars and putting them back into your hands through their foundations, they're really not. Like, not at all. Oh man, it's gonna blow your mind when you find out in like 10 seconds. Point number 2. Where's that money going, big man? Every time you hear of a guy like Bill Gates giving away some $20 gorillion to the Gates Foundation, only 5% of that money will actually go to charitable causes. The absolute minimum required by law. The 95% that's remaining? Why, that goes into the foundation's investment portfolio, of course. You can't run a good charity without hoarding money, silly. Don't believe me? Sources are in the description, as always.
Okay, so a couple things here. One, do I want to do the? I should probably do the research. Charitable, where I got the 6% of gross income stat. Here we go. 5% split into charitable foundations. That's all. He's got 4 articles here. Damn it. Okay, so without doing a ton of research, I am going to posit some ideas here. And this is just me positing ideas because clearly he's done some research, but he kind of brushed over this. Just because the minimum is 5% doesn't mean that's what they always do. Now, it's very, very likely. I would not be surprised if all of them do this. But he doesn't walk you through which ones do this, and I'm not going to go through all of these articles to delve into just that, to explain that, okay, he's going over a possibility. Additionally, oh crap, what did he say? Hoarding, I'm sorry. I should write things down. Anyways, and then hoarding their wealth. Okay, hoarding has a negative connotation.
I don't just make this stuff up. It's section 4942 of the Internal Revenue Code, and every foundation has clearly understood it to mean don't give more than 5%. The bottom line is that we are a simple rounding error off from the Gates Foundation using all of the money it gets from its key investors, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, to do exactly the same stuff it would be doing outside the charity, putting it into stocks. Not only that, it's the kind of stocks that make whatever the foundation is trying to do irrelevant. charitable foundations, including the Gates Foundation,
Shit.
invest in the same profitable companies every other slimy stock portfolio invests in. Fossil fuels like
Slimy.
BP, Shell, and Total. Junk food like McDonald's and Coca-Cola. Mining companies like Rio Tinto. Brands politely referred to as agribusiness companies like Nestle and Unilever. Weapons manufacturers like BAE Systems. And a whole lot more companies that can all easily fit into the "we love to commit human rights abuses" list. Considering this is where 95% of the foundation's funds go.
Okay, let's examine that statement. We love to commit human rights abuses. Do these companies seek out every opportunity to make additional profits without regard to the harm that it causes? Sure. Does that mean that these companies like these harmful business practices? Not necessarily. And here, motivations are important, right? So the problem is that current corporate structures focus on profits. What is the best way to make profits? By cutting corners and breaking rules. The vast majority of regulations are meant to hamper businesses to make things fairer for the people that work for those businesses. Sorry, got distracted. So, do these companies do these things? Yes. Are these things bad? Yes. Does that mean that these companies enjoy doing these things? No. And I'm not defending the companies that do this, but what I'm saying is that they do it because it is economically advantageous, not because they get some sick pleasure out of this. Very important that we note this distinction. And again, he's priming you to think that these companies do these awful things because they like doing them. No. They don't enjoy them. Do some of the people at the company get a kick out of the fact that they make an additional profit by being assholes? Sure, possible. But corporations do not do... It's very difficult to ascribe motivations to somebody if they are not themselves saying that's why they do it. It's also difficult to talk about whether someone gets pleasure out of something if they are themselves not saying that they do. So, again, not a factually incorrect statement. However, this is heavily loaded language. Heavily loaded. Am I getting too close? Yeah, I don't want to get too close to that. Sorry, let's go back into it.
This is where it has the most impact on the world. For a guy who claims to be all about global health and fighting climate change, Gates' money says otherwise. But somehow, someway, this gets worse. Because the rest, the 5% meant for actual good, doesn't do good either. It is very often used to make these despicable companies even more profitable by transforming, quote, charitable projects into regular business investments.
Despicable companies.
Money put into the charity side ends up also being for the investment side after all. Take just one example. In 2014, the Gates Foundation had $538 million worth of shares in Coca-Cola. That same year, one of its big charitable projects was training 50,000 farmers in Kenya. The president of the Gates Foundation's Global Development Program said it was all about, quote, empowering small farmers to increase productivity, improve crop quality, and access reliable markets, which is critical to addressing global hunger and poverty. But what was that project really about? Making that investment in Coca-Cola shares more profitable by training those farmers to produce passion fruit destined for the Coca-Cola Company. Charity for profit. What a dream. And all across the charity's philanthropic involvement, the story is the same. Any giving that yields a profit, be it by adding new workers or more industrialized production, gets the green light. Beyond this incredible perversion of what charity is supposed to be, actually giving money away, charity, not using loopholes to increase your profits, billionaire philanthropy also poses a massive democratic problem. That's point number 3. Now you do what the big man says. By playing with massive sums of money, both deciding where that money goes and where it doesn't go by taking money away from governments, billionaires decide on policies without actually getting democratic approval. Billionaires have effectively created their own side government that does whatever they want. They get to be their own little dictators. But because their intentions are oh so benevolent, we really just let them do it. Instead of funds being allocated on the basis of our collective decision-making, on the balancing of competing interests for funds, and, in the most ideal scenario, equitable distribution of money in the interest of equality, billionaires put money wherever they want to do whatever they please. If Gates just really loves charter schools, boom, now he decides that charter schools get more funding. If he wants more farms for his fizzy brown drink friends, boom, now a city's worth of people is gonna grow some fruit, damn it. This is a tremendous abuse of power from a guy whose best quality was being picked last for dodgeball in middle school. He is not accountable to anyone. His decisions are entirely his own or those of the people he decides to hire. And we don't have a say. The results of giving a few guys who played the system as much say as they want on who gets money and who doesn't are never good. They already do enough of that in the workplace, in the stock market, during the hiring process, in the rest of the economy, and now in charity too. And look, I get that giving money to the US government isn't great. Our government is garbage, and if we gave the US more of this dirty Bill Gates money, we'd get about 4 minutes of celebration before they blew it all on a new drone to kill brown kids in another country. But some of that money would actually go back to us. It would materially improve our lives. The amount we would have a say over, however limited by the more undemocratic parts of our government, would be distributed more fairly and more justly than by letting one guy have the final say on all of it. On top of that, one guy who sucks. Of course, the government can't do everything. But one guy, or just a few guys, pretending that they can is far, far worse. Building our system around letting a guy like Bill profit off of charity, become this glorified leader of sustainable development while stripping everyday people of reasonable pay, rights, access to common goods, and roping in a new generation of people into undemocratic, exploitative work is, well, bad. Billionaires, bad. Charity is just the way they keep this system churning out more people like them. Talking about the charitable bourgeoisie, Oscar Wilde said, "They seriously and very sentimentally set themselves to the task of remedying the evils that they see in poverty. But their remedies do not cure the disease. They merely prolong it. The proper aim is to try and reconstruct society on such a basis that poverty will be impossible. It is immoral to use private property in order to alleviate the horrible evils that result from the institution of private property. It is both immoral and unfair."
Oh,
We
he
are
died.
often told that the
Damn it.
poor are grateful for charity. Some of them are, no doubt. But the best amongst the poor are never grateful. They are ungrateful, discontented, disobedient, and rebellious. They are quite right to be so. Charity they feel to be a ridiculously inadequate mode of partial restitution, or a sentimental dole, usually accompanied by some impertinent attempt on the part of the sentimentalist to tyrannize over their private lives. Why should they be grateful for the crumbs that fall from the rich man's table? They should be seated at the board, and are beginning to know it. The philanthro-capitalist model of charity embraced by these high-horse-riding technocrats does not rid the world of poverty. Its sole purpose is justifying the neoliberal model of capitalism that creates it, that gives a few rich parasites more money than billions of people put together, and that only works by keeping a significant chunk in abject poverty. It puts little band-aids on the most gruesome injuries of capitalism, never questioning how so many people got hurt as a consequence. All the while, they continue to make truly impossible to conceptualize sums of money, get to whitewash their horrible actions and hide them behind good intentions, and promote the idea that having a few well-meaning rich assholes is somehow better than no uber-wealthy rich assholes and a well-engineered system that puts enough money into everyone's hands to live a good life.
Wow, that was a lot. So, Is it possible to design these systems to be more neutral? Yes, of course there is. However, notice how he used the word hurt people instead of the implying that, like, because it's, I gotta be careful how I phrase this. Are people harmed by the systems as they are currently structured, and what they get out of them? Yes. Is there another way to phrase that that isn't, how do I say this? Loaded with a concept of, because when we talk about harm, right, we don't think about, the word harm brings a very specific image to mind, right? That is a person being injured. And there's a much more neutral way of phrasing that. Oh, I cannot believe these shots that I'm missing. Like, this is ridiculous. Absolutely insane. So yeah, he's not factually wrong, but there is 100% another way he could have stated that doesn't come with that loaded language. Oh. Shoot, I should have brought him around. Dang it! Let's keep going.
They put back into the system just enough money to stop the pot from boiling over. And that's it. They think you're stupid and dirty and worthless. Billionaire philanthropy is a scam. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that this kind...
Okay, let's go back over that real quick.
They think you're stupid and dirty and worthless.
It's a lot of loaded words. Do they think you are not worth the an appropriate wage? Or... Sorry, I'm trying to... Does this... Is there a way of stating that does not... Oh my... I hit the gun? Are you kidding me? I'm going to lose my freaking mind. It's really annoying that this is supposed to be like a fix to the RNG issues of XCOM. Where like, oh, I have a 97% chance to hit, and I still missed. Oh, look, it just follows real bullet time. Or bullet projections. Okay, cool. Why am I still missing when the majority of the reticule is... Or, yeah, the majority of the reticule is around their body. Oh, is it because there's percentage chances of where those bullets go? Going to yell so fucking loud. Yeah, so there's a lot of ways that he described things in this video that are just like that prime you to, oh, that's bad, or oh, that's good, or that thing being done is bad and it's being done to good people or innocent people or people who don't deserve it, so on and so forth. And I do want to be clear, I'm not saying that if someone is treating workers poorly, that's acceptable, because it's not. Right? But again, the language being used is incredibly important here. Because the way we describe things puts an image in our head. And that image can absolutely set us up to think one thing or another about what's being described and whether it's good or bad, prior to us ever getting the actual information about that thing. I don't like it when conservatives do this. It's very annoying because instead of presenting the information, we're painting the picture that we want people to buy into. And so I don't like it when lefties do it either. if we're going to talk about these things, we should try, and I have to use the word try here, because obviously emotions and opinions can get away from us, and when talking rather than having a scripted video, that's not always easy, right? But oh man, it's gonna take you forever to get back. Shit. Oh, you're one of those weak ones. Okay. I have to like babysit him to get him back. Yeah, we should always be striving to stick to neutral language, sticking to factual information, because nothing is gained by, or I shouldn't say that. Nothing useful is gained by. I don't want to say misstating, but like the manipulation of someone's opinion doesn't make your argument more correct. It just means you've convinced someone that your point is more correct because you've been able to convince them of how to feel about something. Yeah, so with that said, I will try and do this twice a week. I'm going to try and do this on like Tuesdays and Thursdays. But again, I've been dealing with some health problems, which hopefully will get sorted out sooner rather than later. And then I'm trying to get my computer upgraded and some things working properly that aren't currently, like my webcam and so on and so forth. So please bear with me while I do all that. And thanks for watching. I am working on a few other things as far as like communication with viewers and so on and so forth. So if you're interested in that, leave a comment and I will provide links and so on and so forth. But yeah, just bear with me while I build this up. Things are kind of difficult right now, so I'm doing the best I can, and I appreciate if you watched, and if not, obviously you're not here to hear what I'm saying about it. So yeah, see you guys next time. Thanks.